Hello everyone, welcome to Zobrio University's webinar on voiding and purging. Today we have Nora Alamari, an application consultant here at Zobrio, to lead the webinar. If you have any questions, please leave them in the chat, which is located at the bottom of your screen, and we will go over all questions at the end. Thank you, and I will now hand over hosting to Nora.
Thank you very much. Okay, hello everyone. Good afternoon. I am Nora Alamari. I have worked with a lot of users, so I don't know how many of you I have worked with, but I do support for Financial Edge, whether it's on-premise or on NXT on the cloud. So most of you know me, or a lot of you know me and have my contact information. If not, here it is on the screen, my email. You can email me any question or any requests you might have. Today, I am going to be covering the voiding and purging of AP checks. It's a very hot topic, so let's go ahead and get started. When you are using accounts payable in Financial Edge, you know that you have the option to void checks, to purge checks. You even have the option to just simply not void or purge, just renumber checks. And we're going to go over the different situations where you can do what in what situation. The void, you need to think of the void as simply when you need to reprint a check. So let's say you had printer issues, or the ink was just not clear, or let's say a vendor or the person receiving the check walks in and says, I just need this reprinted, I spilled coffee on it and the bank won't take it. That's when you are just going to void and then redo the payment, which is recreating the check. Voiding is just a very simple process, so a lot of users tend to be, they don't think of it as a major process, but it is, because you do end up with more than one copy of the check, so you need to be very careful on who has permissions to void the check and why, and you need to keep track of everything. So my advice is to limit the permissions, always print, always have a couple of people approve, and definitely any report that can be printed with the voiding process, go ahead and print it. It's just one page, maybe two. It's really worth it in the end. So to void is to reprint with printing issues or the physical check is ruined. Any situation that is similar to that, this is when you want to print and reproduce, to void and reproduce the check. You do not want to void when you need to change the distribution, the post date, or the address on the check. The distribution and the post date are things that you can change on the general ledger side, or to edit the distribution in the invoice. So you do not need to actually void the check. Just simple steps in general ledger or on the invoice will do the job once you post your AP transactions to general ledger. To change the address, just use a different envelope. The simple process of voiding might not, although it's simple, it might not be necessary in a lot of cases where users think that they need to void and they need help with that. So just think that if the physical check is okay, maybe I don't need to void. Next, we are going to look at how to void a check. And there are two ways to void a check. Well, really, there are three. In the bank register, you have two ways one is simpler than the other. And then there's the void payments option. Either way, always print the control reports when you get the option to, when you are asked, when you are prompted, do you want to print the control reports? Because you never know what your auditor or what, what you're going to be asked to show as proof that the check was voided, or you only really have one check that the other copy of it maybe was voided. So it's definitely very useful. It saves you a lot of headache to just print it. It's just one page. Click the button, let it print, or even save it to PDF. Definitely, it's you're not going to regret printing that or saving a copy of it. So there are two ways to void the check. In the bank register, when you are in accounts payable and you select banks, and you select the bank that you are going to be working with, under the general tasks, the first option is to open the register. And I'm sure that a lot of users are familiar with this screen. It lists to you all the payments, whether they are computer checks or EFTs or even bank drafts. Those are listed along with their numbers and status. This is where you have two options. You can right-click on the check or the payment that you want to void, and you will get a menu that will include void as an option, and it opens that very top window here that is titled Void Computer Check. Or you can just double-click on the item, and it's gonna open the details for that payment, whether it's a check or an EFT, and then you can click the option to void, the button to void, and then it opens that void computer check or void EFT screen, the window that you have that you see on the very top. In this window, you are going to select the void date and the reversal post date. You are also going to see the invoices that make up this payment. And you have the option to delete the invoice or to reverse it. Most of the time, you are going to leave the invoices unchanged because you're simply just voiding just the check. You just want to reprint it. So when you void, you can simply just go back and print the check again. And if you delete the invoice, you will have to go all the way back to the invoice stage to where you are entering the invoice information. So the difference between going through the register and going through the other option, which is, let me show you, which is under the administrative tasks, there is an option to void selected payments, is you can select the date. As you can see in this little window that appears when you click the option to void the payment, you can't select the date. It's just going to use the dates that are in the check. So, and although the option to delete the unpaid invoices is available, you still, most of the time, you don't need to do that. And the option to print the control report that I was referring to earlier, that's also available here, but the only difference is you control the void date and the reversal date. So most of the time, we go through this option to void. It does require you to go one check at a time, and it might be more convenient to just go through this screen than to go through the option to just enter the payment number. Once you are in this window, you can click on void, or you can click on void and purge. My advice is to always go one step at a time and just click on void, and then you can go back and purge later, because it's just, you want to be very careful when you're dealing with checks. When you are in the bank screen, you want to be very careful with every click. So to separate the processes is always better. So you can void here or here. When you go through this option, void is one function that you select, and you click on void, and purging is another step, another option that you select, and you can select the numbers. Always print the control reports when you are purging, because once you purge, it's gone. It's completely gone, and you will not have a record of it in any way. So to print the control report and save it somewhere is going to make the auditors very happy. And you can select the transaction type that you are purging. So if it's an EFT and you put in the number, it is not going to purge it right away. So it does require attention to details. The option to print the report is there. The option to cancel is there. So it is very forgiving. But once you click purge now with the correct information, the check is gone completely. When you void a check, under the vendor activity tab, the invoice will show as approved, and it's not going to show as paid. When the invoice is not deleted, that is. So the option to just void and not make any changes to the invoices at the bottom of that window, or in the void window, you can go back to the vendor record and look at the activity tab, and you will see the invoices there, and that way you can make sure that you can recreate the checks or the EFTs. So that's another way for you to check and make changes in the invoices if you wish to do so. Of course, we always have to remind everyone that when you void, you still have to run the post parameter. Otherwise, you are not going to see any activity in general ledger, and your reports will show something is out of balance. So when you void, you want to remember to print the reports. You want to remember to check the invoices before you reproduce the payments, and you want to remember to post. You want to post the actual void transaction. If the original check was not posted and you void it, and then you run the post parameter, you will end up with 0 transactions. So you want to keep that in mind. There are a lot of situations where you have to purge the check in order to reproduce the payment. Again, please remember that when you purge, it's completely gone, so you want to print a copy of it before you purge it. You want to print the control report, and if you will end up with a gap in the check numbers because of the purge, the auditors are definitely going to ask about that situation, and it's always better to have the reports to show them and explain why there is a gap in the check numbers. Typically, you want to purge a check when you want to reuse the check number. So let's say you printed the check on a blank piece of paper. So in that situation, you want to tell Financial Edge to void and purge, and then reset the starting check number in the bank account and reproduce the payment. That way, you use the same invoice and you use the same check number, but this time you're going to print it on actual check stock. So this is very important to remember. So the steps are to print, and you need to remember to reset the starting check number. And then after all of it is done, you will need to post, of course, and keep copies of the control reports when you are voiding or purging. It's always better to have the copies just available for you than to be asked about the details and try to remember. So that's the way, that's the best way to handle the situation. One thing I wanted to remind the users of is that you have the option to print the checks and view them before you finalize and end up having to void or void and purge. Is to print, and you get the this window, the payment printing status. You can back out and not need to void if something is wrong with the physical check or the printer just decided to act funny. This is an excellent option that you have, is to just say it wasn't successful. So just uncheck the box and click on OK. It's going to set it back to where you can reprint the checks. No need to void, no need to do anything. So just remember when you get to this point to not click on OK. Just review the physical checks printed and make sure that everything is OK before you click on OK. If you have any questions, please let me know. If you would prefer to email me your questions or call with your questions, feel free to do that also. If you need further assistance, please contact Matthew Kreutzer at his number or his email. It's on the screen. And don't forget to follow us on LinkedIn and check our website for any news or updates about the software or about the different webinars that we have. So if you have any questions, this is the time. All right. I believe we're
all right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. A recording of this webinar will be made available shortly.
Thank you.